everyone, and welcome to an episode number 2 of my knitting podcast. In this episode, I'm going to share with you some of the projects that I worked this summer. Even though it's not so much, I'm so happy to share them with you. They're really special for me. Overall, I was not able to knit so much during this summer because we had a pretty big adventure of our life with my husband. I'm going to speak a little bit about it in the end of the video if you're interested. But besides that, I was not really knitting so much summer garments, and I was finishing my winter/spring garments and knitting already something for autumn. So it was kind of a transition period. In this video, I'm as usually going to show you my finished objects, work in progress, and some of the acquisitions, and overall excitement about autumn. So I'm going to begin with my first finished object that I'm so excited about. This is a poppy tee by PetiteKnit, but obviously I transformed it into a sweater, and I knitted this in the recommended yarn that she's using for her sample, which is Cardiff Cashmere Classic 100% cashmere yarn that PetiteKnit recommends in her pattern when she knit her poppy tee. But I didn't see any sense to make short sleeves because I see this piece as a sweater. Cashmere is really warm, quite warmer than real wool. And for my climate where I live, it's better to use this as an outer layer just to go for a walk when it's quite cold. So long sleeve made way more sense for me. And for the whole garment of the smallest size, I used 9 balls of Cardiff cashmere. I had 10 balls overall, and I just started the 10th, but I'm sure I could make this only with 9 balls because the sleeves ended up quite long, even a little bit longer than I would like, and the body is quite long. So in this sweater, I also did some technical modifications that I'm going to go through and explain. So if you would like to knit that sweater, hopefully this will be useful for you. And I will also say what I would make different if I would knit this again. So let's start from the beginning. The cast on the back, that's the whole construction. Okay, let's do a few words about the construction. You cast on at the back, and then you start increasing for 2 shoulders as you go along the shoulder slope. Then you let your stitches to rest and you pick up for both shoulders. First you knit one shoulder separately, then second shoulder, and then you connect in the round and you start knitting everything, like front, the back, and the sleeves as raglan increases, which is quite smart and one of my favorite constructions. I love it a lot. So about the technical modifications that I made, if you saw my previous podcast, maybe you got the vibe from me that I'm quite nerdy when it comes to the construction. So of course I did modifications to this pattern as well. So starting at the back, when you cast on stitches over here, originally you just do straight cast on and then you immediately start going back and forth, increasing for the shoulder line over here. Technically this is not so correct because then you have a very straight line over here and then depth in the front. I wanted it to be more correct and I wanted this neck depth in the back. So what I did, I cast on necessary amount of stitches that she recommends, and I started to go back and forth over here, already making the increases for the shoulder slope, coming back 1 and then 2 and then 3, coming back here and do the same here 3 times, basically 3 turns. And that allowed me to create these little triangles over here that then formed this beautiful depth. And if you look at the collar, it doesn't have this straight line, it has a little depth, which is technically correct. I think designers don't do that, both Japanese designers that love using this construction and our European and other designers, they don't do these short rows because it was quite confusing. I had to redo a few times and start again and again. Had a lot of patience. So a lot of effort for a very little technical change, and that's why I think they don't prefer to include that, because the amount of effort you put doesn't correlate to the result. To me it was important, so I did that and I learned something new, which is quite cool. Okay, so then I was knitting as designed over here, pick up for the shoulders. And here what I would do different next time. So when you pick up for the shoulders, you need straight, right? But technically you should make decreases over here. In this piece, you have to make a little decrease as you go front, because then what happens is that from here your shoulder goes like dropped over here, and then you get too wide in the front. So what I don't like about this sweater so much that it's too wide, even though I need the smallest size. It's too much, and the line goes over here, where I would like it to be on the correct pathway, right over here. Otherwise it's here. My idea in my head was that this sweater is going to be a bit more fitted and looks like a perfect classic construction. So if I would do this again, I would do in the shoulders the decreases. So when you pick up, in every second row you do 3 or 4 decreases. And if you learn about this construction in depth, it is correct. Like, you should make decreases, because you also create this rounded line on the shoulder rather than just going straight, if that makes sense. Okay, the nerdy details. The next thing that I did, basically I connected the round. I knit it all to the pattern, exactly all to the pattern with all of these increases. And when I got to the bottom of the sweater, I realized that the front is way shorter than the back. And this is my second sweater in this construction. The first item was my summer top that I showed in my previous podcast. And there happened the same. When I connected in the round, it's the same construction, I realized that the front fabric is shorter. And I started to remember that other podcasters that I saw as well, some of them mentioned that this type of construction always ends up shorter in the front than in the back. So add to this the bust of the woman, and the fabric raises even more. So what I did in the end, I did short rows in the front. I did like 6 turns of short rows, and I added maybe 4 centimeters of the fabric in the front, and that allowed me to have an equal length of the fabric both in the front and in the back. And I'm quite happy with that. You don't see them at all. They're not noticeable over here, and it creates a beautiful result. And the sleeves, obvious modification, made it long. I had to knit the same sleeve twice, because at first I didn't make the correct rate of decreases, sorry. So at first the sleeve ended up too wide, and then I had to unravel it all and making it the width that I wanted. My rate of decreases is on every 8 row. So when I pick up for the sleeves, I knit 8 rows and I decrease on 9, but then every 8 row I was decreasing, and overall amount of decreases was 10 times, 10 decreases. Another thing that I want to show you is my underarm. So when you pick up for the underarms, you know that you probably will have these 2 holes, right? And what you can do is to pick up 2 additional stitches and then decrease them as you continue knitting in the round to kind of fill up these holes underarms. And I did pick up 3 additional stitches, and I did 3 decreases. That allowed me to have this completely hole-free underarm. As you can see, it's really, really nice, clean underarm. And I really love that, because yes, it's more work, it's more attention, but in the end you have a beautiful decreased underarm and you don't have to sew anything. For me, that's actually easier than sewing, making sure it's beautiful. But this yarn is so fluffy that it kind of fills up the holes in between and it's not so visible. It's the first time that I did 3 additional stitches, and I really like that. Another thing, if I would knit this again, I would do less increases for the body and for the sleeves at the same time, because for me it's still a little bit too wide. I would do maybe 2 less increases, and then I will have perfect armhole depth. Yeah, that, because it grew quite a lot after the blocking, and I didn't expect that so much. To be honest, I still think it might shrink a little bit after the second blocking. So when I would block this again, I would just collect the fabric a little bit more and even let it rest in the sun maybe for 20 to 30 minutes, because when I let it rest in the sun, all of my garments shrink a little bit, of course, because it's hot, and I might experiment a little bit with that. So right now let's speak about the collar and the ribbing. The collar is 2x1 rib, folded, and folded connected in the way that she recommends in her pattern, no changes, and that creates this beautiful, clean, very strong line over here. It was not so easy to make, to be honest. It was the first time I fold the collar in such way, but I can clearly say it's worth the effort. It took me the whole day to knit the collar. I was very careful because this is the most visible part, and of course I wanted it to be very nice and clean. The only mistake that I did, not mistake, a little bit of laziness, is that I pick up stitches and then I had to pick up a bit more. Didn't have space and I pick up like here a bit too much, so it's a little bit more stitches here than here, and therefore more fabric here than here, but to someone's eye is completely invisible, so it doesn't matter. But for the next time I would be not lazy to just unravel the pickup and pick up correct amount of stitches. So the ribbing is again 2x1, and I have split hems over here. It was quite tricky because for the split hem I use a specific edge over here. I use the double edge stitches. What that means is that you have 2 stitches for the edge rather than just 1, and that gives you a thicker finishing and more stable. So I did that. That means I had to have the amount of stitches that are possible to divide by 3 plus 2 edge stitches for each side. So a little bit of math and I was able to do that, but it was still a little bit painful. In the end, it's really beautiful. The only thing that I must say is that knitting back and forth 2x1 rib was a bit ugly. The stitches were very jumpy and uneven, and it looked quite ugly. I just prayed that the blocking will fix that, and it did. Not perfectly, but trust me, it was way worse. When I knit 2x1 rib in the round, it's perfect, it's beautiful. But back and forth, I still haven't found the way to make it nice, even, and not ugly, because this yarn is a little bit forgiving and blocking fixes a lot of things. But other yarns are not so forgiving, so I would like to find a way to knit 2x2 rib or 2x1 rib flat in the way that it doesn't look ugly. So the same I did for the sleeves, and when to cast off, I just did a purl cast off. The most traditional standard cast off, but you don't knit your stitches, you purl your stitches and then you slip one over another. It looks beautiful, I love it. It gives it a very thick, luxurious finish, as for me. And yeah, I just didn't want to think of how am I supposed to bind off for 2x1 rib in any other different way. So here we are. Overall, the summary of this project is incredible. I love it so much. It's so fluffy. I think it was worth it. I'm not sure if I'm going to ever buy this yarn again for a huge project like that, because I also knit a lot with Italian yarn and cone with cashmeres that are on stock, and they're also really amazing. And I have one finished object that I'm going to share with you right now that has this cashmere as an additional thread, and I'm going to compare them. So Poppy Tea but sweater is in my wardrobe. Tomorrow I have my birthday, by the way, and in the evening, if it's going to be a little bit cool, I'm going to wear this. Hopefully the weather will be a little bit fresh, so I'm going to be able to wear this. It's beautiful. My second finished object is a hat for my husband. Not because we were cold in summer, but because we needed hats for our adventure in the mountains. and it's quite cold up there, so we needed something thin, durable, but warm, and I made some mixes. So basically this is the hat. It's like PetiteKnit's hat, the same exact construction. I don't have her pattern, but I saw the pictures, and since I know how to knit hats, it was quite obvious for me how to make decreases on the crown. And also it has the banded ribbing over here that you create with double knitting. I did, I think, 5 rounds of double knitting. This hat is knit on 2.5mm needles. So this hat is knit with 3 strands of yarn. The first strand is Regia Premium Cashmere, is a sock yarn. This is the leftover. This is the color 93. It has 400 meters in 100 grams, and it has 65% of wool, 25% polyamide, and 10% cashmere. So yeah, they call it cashmere, but there's only 10% of cashmere, which is good because if it would be more, this yarn wouldn't be durable for the socks. So another 2 strands of yarn were cashmere from Italian Yarn & Cone. I bought it in stock market in Ukraine. Basically, Italian Yarn & Cone is yarn that was not used to create big collections of a brand of Cariaggi and other brands. So I used Cariaggi. I have no leftover whatsoever in the color Antracite. So 2 strands of that yarn and 1 strand of this made me have this beautiful fabric in the end. It's quite soft and quite fluffy, but durable at the same time. So I find it a perfect blend because I have a feel of cashmere. It's very, very soft. I already washed it a few times right after I knit it and right after we came back from the adventure, so it was already in use, and you can see it's still in a perfect shape, and cashmere released its beautiful tiny fluff over here. So I achieved durability and strength with sock yarn, and I added fluff with cashmere. I love this so much. The only thing is that Antracite color of Cariaggi cashmere is very cold, and the Regia Premium cashmere was very warm color. It took me quite a while to knit this hat because again 2.5mm needles, and I was knitting it quite careful, quite tight because it's mountains, is really cold. It might be even below 0 degrees Celsius over there. So yeah, I did a German twisted cast on, which is quite flexible and quite strong. I love this a lot, and yeah, overall it just reminds me it's exactly PetiteKnit's weekend hat but in a smaller gauge. And with the leftover I'll probably knit myself a little bralette or 2 very short socks, but I'm not sure if I have enough yarn. I need to wait it and see what can I do with that. But I'm quite sure about the little tiny bralette over here. That would be nice. It's quite soft yarn, and it could be quite durable. Maybe I can even wear it to work out in the gym, but not sure about that. So the third finished object is also a hat for my husband. He deserves a lot, right? So this is the hat. And the name of the yarn is Schachenmayr or Schachenmayr. Don't really know how to pronounce it. Extrafine Merino 120 in the color 155, which is 100% virgin extrafine merino wool, non-superwashed. It looks like superwashed, but it's not. It's really, really soft, but it's quite fragile. I think if he would always use it and just throw it in his backpack, it will go bad quite fast. But overall, it's really beautiful. So this is a brioche stitch, and there is no pattern to this hat. I just had to again count it myself, knit it all the way up, just straight, and then do decreases. Decreases are quite tricky over here. I had to see a YouTube tutorial on how to make decreases on the brioche stitch, but in the end of the day it looks pretty clean and fine. He loves it a lot. When I just finished the hat, all of the hat was twisted like in a spiral. I think it's because the thread of the yarn is quite twisted as well, and I'm not sure because of that I would knit anything again in this yarn. However, it's quite affordable and is really feels a bit luxurious to me. It's really soft, Really nice. Maybe I'll need something for a baby in the future if I ever have one, because I have some leftovers. And I also bought the same exact yarn for myself to also make a hat for me. And this is how we slowly transition to a WIP. But before the next WIP, I'll show you another socks that I have as a finished object as well. But since we speak about the hat, about this yarn, I just want to show you this. This is the same yarn but in a different color, which is really this beautiful baby blue. I don't remember the number. And also the same hat with different stitch count for my head in brioche. But it sits in my stash for a little while, and over some time I thought I would like to add a mohair to this hat and use it as a hat to go for a winter vacation or a winter walk when it's quite cold. So the baby blue with the snow and some wintry weather would look amazing. And then I bought this Rowan Kissel case, which is a mohair, 70% mohair and 30% silk. And I'm going to pair it with this yarn to create a baby blue hat. They're a bit different because the mohair has a different shade a little bit than the merino, but I think in the end it's going to blend quite well. So I'll have to unravel my beginning and then do the whole thing again. To be honest, I love knitting sweaters and cardigans the most, and hats or socks I just make out of necessity. So last but not least, finished object is also for the trip that we just did in July for the mountains, specifically socks to sleep in my sleeping bag. So when we sleep high up in the mountains in very cold weather, usually my feet were getting cold. And I knit these socks that were already used, but I'm going to show you them anyways because it's a recently finished object. This is a Regia design line by Arne and Carlos. Really beautiful yarn, really colorful, especially for Christmas and winter season. They have blues mostly, but I think they have also orange colors. Yeah, you can take a look because I really love this line. And the yarn is quite softer than other Regia, like really woolly Regia socks. I have one of them. They're really pokey to my feet, even through cotton socks, which is surprising. But this yarn, after a wash, I could even wear on the naked feet. And they were warming me up in my sleeping bag, in my tent, for the whole time as we were hiking in the mountains. It was so amazing. And I knit them big on purpose because I was sure I'm not going to be able to wear them on my skin because they're pokey. So I was always wearing something underneath. But to be honest, I would like to knit them smaller if I would knit them again because they stretched a little bit and now they're basically huge. So these are the sock blockers of 35/37 size European, and they're just huge, like for male. It's a self-drafted pattern. I just didn't see a sense to buy a pattern since I know how to knit basic socks. Otherwise, some technical specification, it has 2x2 ribbing, and I made pearl stitches twisted on the wrong side, so the ribbing is a bit tighter. Then it has the German short row heel, and just normal basic socks. Don't want to go in so much details about them. Quite happy. I'm not really a sock knitter, so don't use me as a reference because mostly I prefer to knit sweaters and cardigans. So if I knit something like that, it's probably not my best perfect socks. My work in progress, only one project. I thought I will have 2 projects at least. I wanted to cast on an Esther jacket, but I swear it's so hot. Even now I'm speaking, and just because of speaking I start to sweat so much. It's just so crazy, to be honest. I barely finished my poppy tea, so I was like, okay, let's wait for the temperature to drop. I don't have to torture myself for a knitting podcast. And overall, I created this podcast with the intention to enjoy it and never force myself to finish something so quick or to start something or to start a lot of projects just for the video. I just promised that, and with that promise I started the channel, so I can't break that. So that's why only one work in progress. So my next WIP is Plain Yoke Tee by LeKnit or Laniholm Samso. It's knit in 100% viscose or bamboo yarn, by Casasol. One ball is 200 grams and has 400 meters. That means for 50 grams we have 100 meters, which is exact meters that she recommends for her pattern. She's using Sadness Garden linen for this pattern that looks brilliant, and to be honest, if I would have the choice to make with this yarn or Sadness Garden linen, if I would have it in my stash, I would choose that one. It looks a bit rustic and it's beautiful and a little bit uneven, and I just love that effect. However, I had this in my stash. I bought it here in Tenerife with my friend Ina. She's also knitting, and once we met to have a chat and to meet each other and have a dinner, we also went in a yarn shop, and I could say I impulsively bought this yarn in this beautiful brownish rustic shade. But I don't regret it because it looks really beautiful. Okay, so this is the pattern Plain Yoke Tee by LeKnit. I'm doing short rows. She has two options, either to skip short rows if you're a complete beginner, or to make them, to raise the back a little bit to make it technically correct and comfortable to wear. I never wear anything without short rows. It's a big problem for me because then it feels like it's choking me, so always short rows over there. And she's knitting this on 4mm needles. When I knit the swatch on 3.5mm needles, I hit the gauge and I loved the fabric. But right now, as I'm knitting it and as I'm growing my yoke, I'm thinking, isn't the fabric too stiff? Because it's already quite thick, and I don't know. I have a little bit of doubts that maybe this yarn is not the best choice for this project. But I decided to not rush myself and just do the thing and block it and then decide if I want to unravel it or not. It's knitting quite fast because the thread is quite thick, but I have a little bit of doubt. The second project that I was considering using this yarn was vest number 8 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I was going to use it as a summer piece. So the reason why I didn't do it is because I was afraid that the depth of the V would be too deep and the depth of the armholes would be too deep. So I was afraid that I'm going to knit the piece and it's going to be just a pain for me to find any top or kind of bra or anything to wear with this, because the color is a bit complicated. And well, maybe if I would wear black top, you know, like a straight line black top would be nice, but I really don't like black color, so I don't know, I didn't decide to do that. I'm knitting it on my Bambú C-knit needles, and sometimes I'm thinking, should I change to my Cacao stainless steel needles? Because depending on the level of humidity, it might be a nightmare to start the knitting in the morning. We have 80% humidity over here. But then I start knitting and it starts to get slippery and nice, and I'm thinking, no, Bamboo needles are fine. So this yarn is kind of in the middle. It's not so comfortable to knit with. It's a little bit harsh on my wrists, and comparing to Poppy Tea, Cardiff Cashmere, it's not the same. Cardiff Cashmere is like butter, you know, it's just flows over your needles. It's so good. So yeah, this is the work in progress, and this is my last summer piece. But I have quite a lot of yarn, so I have 2 balls of 200 grams. And I'm thinking maybe I should make a long sleeve version. But I don't know, I don't really love this project so much like I loved my Poppy Tea, for example. So with that being said, that's it for today's podcast. And right now I'm going to speak a little bit about my adventure and the yarn shop that I went to and my experience with that. And if you don't want to hear that, you can just say goodbye to me. Let me know in the comments what you're knitting right now. Are you excited for fall? What is on your needles, or what are you going to cast on? Share something with me. I'm new here, and it was really beautiful and rewarding and exciting to see your comments under my first video that I published a few months ago. So yeah, I really appreciate human connection in digitalized world today, so please drop me a comment if you feel like it. Otherwise, I'm going to speak right now about our beautiful adventure. So, me and my husband went to France to do a very huge famous hike. If you're hiking, you may heard of that. It's called Tour du Mont Blanc. Basically, you start hiking in France and then you go around the Mont Blanc Massif, you go to Italy, you go to Switzerland, and you come back to France. Always up and down, a lot of mountains, a lot of trails. You're constantly on the way. This hike was on my list for many years, but to be honest, I did not believe that I could ever accomplish that. This hike is very, very, very hard. For the reference, if you're hiking, we passed 185 kilometers and we gained over 11,000 meters of elevation gain without counting decline. We did not count decline. So we were hiking for 17 days and we rested for 3 days on the way. So 14 days of pure hike with huge backpacks. It was sometimes really cold, really hot. It was crazy beautiful Alps. And Alps are always in my heart. I always come back there. I hike and everything is so colorful, so beautiful. This green grass, these cows, the sheep, the flowers, the snow, the glaciers. Yeah, just is my second home. So right now I'm living in Tenerife in Spain, in Canary Islands. And just in 2 months, we're going to move to the north of Spain, to Asturias. And from there, it's going to be easier to reach Alps. So I'm gonna hike way more over there. Due to this fact, some of my knitting will be referred to the mountains, especially color work. I think it looks gorgeous in the mountains. And in everyday life, I think I prefer more minimalistic looks. So it's going to be sometimes the projects that are completely devoted to the nature. So in there, where we started the hike from Chamonix in France, there's a beautiful, cute yarn shop. I researched about it before going and I thought I'm going to buy for sure some yarn as a memory for my adventure, and I'm going to knit something remembering about this trip. And right before the hike, I tried to enter this cute little shop with my huge backpack. She said, leave your backpack over there, please. You're going to destroy all of the yarn. And I touched a lot of yarns that I wanted to touch before. Yarns like Lamana, like Mayak or Miyak, how they're calling themselves. West Yorkshire spinners, a lot from Lang and a lot from Kremke, Soul Wool, and yeah, I could just be there for hours. She's a small shop, but she has so much yarn that is special. And during the hike, I was thinking what projects would I need with this yarn or this yarn, so I wanted to buy some yarn. And at some point, it started to annoy me that I'm kind of obsessive with the fact that I have to purchase the yarn for the memory of this hike. And to be honest, it was hard for me to decide because I'm very conscious about my yarn consumption and consumption overall, and just buying something right now impulsively mostly stresses me rather than brings me happiness. So during the hike of these 17 days, sometimes I was thinking, okay, I want to knit this project, and there is a yarn that I really wanted to buy from West Yorkshire Spinners. I think it's Execute called, in this very beautiful ice blue color. So it has 80% Falkland wool and 20% silk. And I was not able to find exact project that will suit that because the fabric in the end is going to end up pretty drapey. So I was kind of stressing myself already to find the project for this specific yarn because I really want it. And you know, when I came back from the hike, again back to that village, to Chamonix, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to buy any yarn. Like, I don't have to buy. And just this idea of consumerism connected to bright experiences did not feel right to me at that point. So I didn't buy anything, not even sock yarn or anything, even though she has a lot of cool stuff. And then when we were going back to Tenerife, we flew through Barcelona and we had to stay there overnight. And I went there to another yarn shop that was incredible as well. I touched so much yarn there. I was just like going around and touching and not buying anything. And the only thing that I bought is sock blockers from Kremke Soul Wool. which look like that. I did not have any sock blockers, so that was quite useful. I don't have any yarn acquisitions, but I do have ball winder acquisition, which is a ball winder from KnitPro, natural wood version. So they have two versions of such ball winder. One that is treated wood, that is quite polished and shiny, that has this rainbow green circles inside. And this is untreated wood. Well, it has some treatment outside. I was afraid it's going to be completely rustic wood that is going to absorb all of the humidity from my apartment. But actually not, it has some treatment on top and it looks very minimalistic and clean. I don't have any ball winder, and I work quite a lot with Italian yarn on cone that comes in a meterage, for example, 1,500 meters per 100 grams, 3,000 meters per 100 grams, and sometimes I have to wind them separately and then create a thread together and then do a lot of manipulations to be able to knit with that. So this elastic thread can be changed. If it stretches over time, you can just buy again the same from KnitPro. I have not tested it yet, but I will have to for my next project, the Aster jacket that I'm about to cast on. Anyways, there are quite a few projects that I'm excited to cast on for this fall, and I would love to create a video with my fall knitting plans, where I'm going to speak in detail about each project and the yarn that I either already have or that I will have to buy for that project. Thank you so much for watching, for listening about my adventure. Otherwise, have a beautiful beginning of fall, a lot of inspiration, a lot of time to knit, and hopefully we'll see you soon in my next video.